because of how much has changed. You don't know what you're going to see, but I trust Dan Campbell. His intensity is really hard to match. I might sound crazy saying this, but for a team that has Justin Jefferson, I think this defense might actually be the team's biggest strength. Which sounds, it might sound crazy, but like Brian Flores is such an asset. His defense, the deception. They have like 6 or 7 guys dancing over the line of scrimmage, before dropping back and stuff like that. It confuses the hell out of quarterbacks. And that's where things got crazy, because Green Bay won every game remaining on their schedule against non-division opponents, but fell short by a few games in the NFC North because they went 1-5 in a division. And they were actually a Caro Santos blocked field goal away from going 0-6 in the NFC North.
They're creating an offensive environment for Caleb to thrive. The Colson Loveland pick is a really interesting one, because I quite liked Cole Kmet. Well, I liked. It's as if he's perished.
It's still there.
he's still there. It'll be interesting to see how they set up. Because you put those two guys on the field as well together. They'll be a hard team to stop. They'll be a fun team to watch.
Hello everyone, Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry. What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judy, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the 14-Yard NFL Podcast.
We are heading into the final week of the NFL preseason, which means opening night is rapidly approaching. I'm Sam Moores, and welcome back to the 14 Yards NFL podcast. And today we're continuing our 2025 season preview series. Pretty much as a long series, all eight divisions, by dissecting the NFC North today. And I'm joined by a fantastic returning guest to help break it all down. He's a senior US sports writer for The Mirror, covering everything from the NFL to boxing and golf, and author of The Special Relationship: The History of American Football in the United Kingdom. I'm thrilled to welcome back Andrew Gamble to the podcast. Andrew, great to have you on again.
Well, what an intro. Thank you, man. It's a pleasure to be back here. Obviously, was on the show a few times last year. And yeah, man, like you said, I'm ready for last week of preseason coming up now. I'm ready for the action to get properly going. We talked a little bit before the show about, nice to get preseason football back, and nice to see, guys hitting each other and playing for roster spots. But you want to see, we want to see the best players in the world kind of taking each other on, in competitive action. So yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the NFC North should be a tasty division this year. Do you think this is the best division in football?
Yeah, I think last year kind of proved that it was. Last season it was definitely the best division in football. I think this year, obviously it's too hard to say right now, but I think it's certainly going to be the most competitive. I think the fact that you can, pick any team in the four, of the 4 teams, and get a good kind of argument for them to win the division. You can't do that, I don't think, with any other division. Certainly not with a straight face. So, I think it's certainly going to be the most competitive division. Whether it will be the best, we will see. But I think they're going to beat each other bloody, which is going to be a fun watch. Yeah,
we had that with the AFC North earlier in the week, where I was saying, well, this is a great division, but it's a 3-way battle. Now this, because of how bad the Browns are this year, but this division could realistically work out as, I think any of these teams could be any of these teams on their day. And again, as you mentioned, it was fascinating last year. We'll sort of start, as we do the first 3 episodes of the series, we'll start a podcast by looking back at last year before going into the team-by-team breakdowns for the division and predicting their win total for every team this season. And we'll start at the top of the division last year, where the Detroit Lions won their second straight title with a franchise record 15 wins and 564 points scored, which is the 4th most in NFL history. The most important of those wins came in Week 18 when they beat the Minnesota Vikings to secure the final, the division on the final Sunday Night Football of the season, the final game of the season as well. And yeah, the Lions were great, but they fell short in the playoffs, well, shorter than many people thought they would do in the playoffs as well. Minnesota, who were predicted by many to come fourth in the division this time last year, they shot the world by winning 14 games and competing with the Lions for the NFC North all the way until the end. They actually doubled their win total predicted at this time last season as well. So they completely came out of nowhere and had a great season. And that was with Sam Darnold at quarterback after the first round pick JJ McCarthy suffered a season-ending injury in the preseason. But both of them fell short of expectations in the playoffs. The Vikings were looking great all season. Kind of tailed off towards the end, and they lost to the Rams in a wildcard round before the Lions lost in a divisional round to the Commanders after having the first round bye as the 1 seed. This time 12 months ago, it felt like everyone and their mum was picking the Packers to be their sort of dark horse Super Bowl pick, whereas that didn't really pan out at all. And that was all because of how well Jordan Love's first year as a starting quarterback ended up. Now, they did win they did improve their win total to 11 wins, up from 9 in the previous season. But the season actually ended how it started in Brazil, losing to the Eagles in the wildcard round. And finally, the Chicago Bears also had a lot of hype going into last year after ending up the number 1 overall pick after going 7-10, thanks to the Bryce Young trade. They happily selected Caleb Williams with the number 1 overall pick and surrounded him with what looked like a really good receiver core at the time last year. But the rookie struggled behind one of the worst offensive lines in football last year, taking 68 sacks, and the offensive pieces failed to live up to expectations. Matt Eberflus's defense also wasn't as good as it was the season before, and they're struggling to one-score games as well. So he was fired as head coach midway through the season after Thanksgiving. So this division packed for this year is great. The Lions have been forced into a ton of overhaul after their 2 coordinators left. And 2 big pieces of their offensive line have also either retired or gone elsewhere. Whilst the Bears have a new coaching staff led by one of those former Lions coordinators, Ben Johnson. The Vikings have handed over the reins to JJ McCarthy now at quarterback, and the Packers are hoping they can get the same Jordan Love that finished 2023, not the banged up one that played last year. And as we have done in each of these episodes, we'll start with the team that won the division last year. We'll start with the Lions. And Dan Campbell had a great year as head coach last year. They looked destined for the Super Bowl already. Winning 15 games. Not many teams have done that on their way to the 1 seed. But towards the end of the year, they suffered some really, really bad defensive injuries. So many players down the stretch, and the defense held. They held tough. They performed pretty well. Despite missing Aiden Hutchinson and pretty much the whole defensive line towards the end of the season. But by the time the playoffs came, they were burnt out. They went behind early to the Commanders and weren't able to get back into the game. Ben Johnson did a terrific job expanding on what was already a good offense in the first 2 years. It was top 4 in total offense in all 3 years he was a coordinator in Detroit. But 3 players last year scored at least 12 touchdowns. They were also only the second team to have 4 players with at least 1,000 yards in scrimmage and 7 touchdowns in a season as well. The only other team to do that were the 2004 Colts, who were also knocked out in a divisional round, funnily enough. And on the defense, Aaron Glenn did a terrific job as well. That defense was picked on in his first 2 years in Detroit. That was it was very much offensive heavy, and the defense couldn't do anything. The defense last year, especially with such a big banged up unit, was really well. It was 7th points allowed as the season closed. And both of those coordinators have now left the building after staying 1 more year when the Lions lost the NFC Championship game to the Niners 2 years ago. And now this team are kind of starting again. They have 2 new coordinators, and they've lost 2 starters on the interior of the offensive line. Would you say that we are about to find out exactly what kind of culture that Dan Campbell has set in Detroit?
Yeah, I think we're going to see. I think a lot of people are talking about how the Lions are going to take a step back. You lose to a high quality play callers. I mean, we'll see what they're like as head coaches. But I mean, 2 great coordinators and 1 in division as well. I think you're going to take a step back when you lose 2 guys who are that impressive at what they do in Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I do think the Lions, people talking about this kind of being maybe not the end of the road, but they're gonna given the competitiveness of the division, how good are the Lions actually going to be in 2025? I think Dan Campbell doesn't get enough credit. I think to be a head coach, you still understand the playbook. Ben Johnson seemingly got all the credit on offense. It's not as if Dan Campbell was sat in those offensive meetings, kind of like twiddling his thumbs. Like
he was a tight end as well, so he knows a bit about offense. It's not like he doesn't know anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that kind of stuff is a little bit overblown, and kind of like you said as well, they had a lot of injuries down the stretch last season. So touch wood that they'll be healthier this year and can stay healthy, because I think Aiden Hutchinson was certainly on path to winning DPOY last year. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think obviously there's a lot of change. So I think the incoming guys, I think Morton on offense in particular, I think is going to be under pressure to get that unit going. But they have a lot of talent, and two guys are retiring. Was it Ragnow and
Zyla went to the Ravens as well.
That's it.
Yeah. So two guys on the interior that were. I mean, that's the blood of that team. The last couple of years has been the run game.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
those two guys. That is something to watch certainly this year, isn't it?
For sure, and it'll be interesting to see, because I think again, like they'll almost certainly take a small step, at least a small step back, because of that, because you can't lose really two high level offensive linemen and maintain your quality. But I think David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs are not going to forget how to run the ball. I think they're going to still be effective there as well. I mean, they'll be under pressure as well coming in. The guys coming in to replace him. The rookie Tate Ratledge? I think it'll be interesting to see how he goes, because I think Detroit would have preferred Frank Ragnow to retire next season and give Ratledge a little bit more time to kind of find his feet in the NFL. But I think that'd be interesting. I think the Lions are still going to be good in 2025. I think they're going to still be a tough team to beat. As you say, that's Dan Campbell's culture.
And exactly, I feel like they by the way, Zeitler came from the Ravens. He's gone to the Titans, but either way, he's left and then Ragnar retired. I agree with you there. I feel like they're gonna be decent, but it's a tougher division this year. The NFC is tougher as a whole. Like if you look at the Super Bowl winning odds, for the first time in a long time, 5 or 6 of the first 10 teams are from the NFC. Whereas before we've had all these AFC heavyweights and stuff, so it is a very competitive NFC. But I absolutely agree with you there. Do you think that they've? I think last year was probably their best chance in terms of their best team, and obviously the coordinators and everything as well. And obviously the year before they came close, and they probably should have beaten the Niners that game as well. Do you think that they might have maybe missed their best chance of winning a Super Bowl, or do you still think that they've certainly got every chance the next couple of years?
I think it would be foolish to write them off. I think, but in terms of, is that their best opportunity? I mean, I think it would be difficult not to agree with 2023 or like you said, the NFC game or next year where they were the number 1 seed. I think it's difficult to not say that those were probably better opportunities on paper. You lose the coordinators, the guys we've talked about, the offensive linemen, that kind of stuff. And Ratledge might come in and the Lions might still, be moving like the same well-oiled machine, but it's like like you said as well, the NFC has gotten more difficult. It's gotten more quality across the board. It's harder to pick. That's why certainly there's more, like you said, there's more Super Bowl contenders, according to the bookies, based kind of coming out of the NFC. And I think that's because it's harder to call. So do I think the Lions have missed their chance? No. Have they missed their best chance? I think you'd probably have to say yes, but I don't think that necessarily means that their window's still certainly open, and I can't see a world in which they I can't see a world in which they don't look like a Super Bowl caliber or at least a contender still this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel I'm a little bit concerned about the sort of continuity this year. Obviously, we saw the Eagles a couple of years ago where they had 2 new first-time play callers, which is what the Lions have this year in John Morton and Calvin Shepherd. We saw it didn't go very well for them, and some of those guys got fired halfway into the year. Now these guys, the guys that are doing it, they're guys that a lot of people wanted these coordinators. Ben Johnson wanted Shepherd on his staff as DC at the Bears. Morton was highly regarded after his year with Sean Payton at the Broncos. These were highly sought after head coordinator hires, so it's not like they're just there to make up the numbers or anything. So we'll see what happens. there. Obviously, we mentioned it on the offensive line. 6th round pick from last year, Christian Mahogany, and 2nd rounder from this year, Tate Ratledge, certainly have big shoes to fill. And for the Lions, I felt they are firmly in the window. I agree with you. They're in the 3rd year of their window, I think. In that time, they've reached the NFC Championship game and they've had a 15-win season. That's pretty decent. After this year, they probably have one more year, so sort of 2 years, including this year, before the contracts of many of those like core players expire. So they really haven't got too long left to win that first title for in franchise history. But next season, like this, may be their last chance without any drama, because this time next year, all you're going to be hearing about the Lions is contracts, because you've got Aiden Hutchinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Jameson Williams, Jack Campbell. All of those contracts expire at the same time. So and also Jared Goff's cap hit doubles after this year as well. It goes up to $74.5 million, I think, the next 2 years or something crazy like that. So you've got you have got 2 years basically with these guys, and then you're going to have to either move on from Jared Goff and be a year later than that when his contract opens up, or you're going to have to pick and choose who stays and who goes. So yeah, certainly these guys together, they've got 2 years and that's it. And after 2 crushing playoff losses in 2 seasons, I do hope they can go all the way, because they are everyone's sort of second team to root for, because of how long Lions fans especially have suffered with the mismanagement of their team. And I think their big strength is is winning close games. They're really good at that, and that's because we mentioned earlier. That's because of their run game. Sonic and Knuckles, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, as they like to be called, they were so good as a duo last year, which then helped Jared Goff have a career year in a lot of like advanced metrics, where he was so clutch because their offense was so unpredictable because the run game was good, and then it opened up everything else because the defenses are committing to stopping the run game. And I hope that can continue with Morton this year. And that is a really big strength for the Lions. Do you think they have any other like big strengths that across the team?
I think the defense. I think last year, down the stretch, they had so many, like that whole unit just got smashed with injuries. So I think that was one of the kind of the big narratives, really. They were still a 15-win team with that banged up unit. So I think the defense has the potential to be pretty good again. With all these guys healthy. Yes, they've got the new coordinator in there, but I think their defense is going to be certainly a big strength. I think when you look at the Lions as a whole, I think it's going to be really interesting just to see. I think because if they are, if they do play well and they do contend, kind of as we're kind of alluding to potentially, they're going to earn it, right? Like they're playing. Their schedule is difficult. They're playing some of the best players in the league. They're playing MVP contenders. So I think, I think the Lions, however where their season goes, they're going to be playing the best team. So if they come out of this, in the play, they might be quite. I feel like last year they almost kind of. I don't know if they got like banged up trying to win the division, but it almost felt like certainly that last game was essentially a playoff. Well, it wasn't a playoff game because obviously both teams were still making it, but it had that intensity. And yes, they had the bye week and then played Washington, but I think they almost kind of exhausted themselves out maybe down the stretch, whether it was emotionally or what. And it'll be interesting to see how they fare with this schedule, because they're playing. They got Mahomes, Lamar, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Jaden Daniels. So they're playing a lot of the big boys, and let alone the guys in their own division. So it's going to be a good season. I think the Lions they'll earn it no matter what happens. Their record is going to be it's going to be interesting. But they're a team with a lot of strength. I think on both sides of the ball. Still, I think even the losses that they've taken this season in terms of personnel and staff and stuff like that, I think the talent on the field is still clear to see. Yeah,
and I think the injuries are a key thing to watch this year. Because the defensive line is already a little bit injured this year. Obviously, Aleem McNeil did his ACL towards the end of last season. He's coming back. He will miss the start of this year, but it's sounding good in his recovery. But they've lost Levi Onwuzurike for the year already as well in that position. So there are a few guys down to start the year. So first round pick Tyreek Williams, he has a big role right out the gate on that defensive line. And I'm a little bit worried about it because obviously Hutchinson being back is mega. He's one of the best players in the entire NFL, and him being there makes everyone else look really good because there's so much attention on Hutchinson that it can let everyone else sort of go under the radar and do a really good job. I really like Marcus Davenport opposite to him, but the problem with him is he's had a lot of injuries over the year as well. So that's something to watch. But Hutchinson being back will make everyone else better, won't it? And that's really key on it. On a defense like that.
For sure, and I think the secondary as well will be interesting to watch. Because the safeties last year, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph were fantastic. They bring in DJ Reed as well. I think Terry Arnold had a good, improved a lot certainly down the back end of last season. So if he makes the jump as well in year two, then I think that line secondary is going to be one to contend with again. I mean, it was great last year with Kirby Joseph got, I can't remember how many interceptions it was, but it was near the top of the league. I seem to remember. So I think they'll be a fun team to watch on both sides of the ball, which is like what we said at the start. That's Dan Campbell's brand of football. They've ever since he's kind of taken over. Maybe not that first season when they lost a lot of games, but after that, once they kind of found their groove, they've really been rolling.
Well, even then, that first season, they won loads of games down the stretch. They had the fourth best offense, and they stopped the Packers from going into the playoffs in Aaron Rodgers' last game as well. So there's some huge wins towards down the end of the stretch, and then a year later they're in the championship game. So yeah, it certainly had a rocky first year, but it's ever so worth it towards the end. And yeah, I agree with you. I think they should be a lot better in coverage again this year, stepping up from last year, which is already a step up. As you mentioned, Arnold going into a second season, getting better. DJ Reed now gets to be almost like a number one guy after being the number two to Sauce Gardner the whole time as well. So we'll see what happens there as well. But that should be good. And I really do like that defense. So I'm looking forward to watching that this year. Okay, let's finish the Lions by predicting whether they'll go over or under the projected win total. The bookies have their line right now at 10.5 wins, which might seem low, but then you alluded to it earlier, Andrew. That's because they faced the second toughest schedule this year. So many, especially the start of the schedule, was very, very tough for them. I'll let you go first. It's a tough choice. 10.5 wins. Which way are you leaning?
Oh, I think this is one of the better placed win loss kind of over unders for the season, because I think the Lions, I can't really see them getting less than 10 wins. But again, like with that schedule, I wouldn't be like 10. I'll go over. I think they can hit 11, potentially 12 wins. It's a tough game. It's a tough run of teams, but the Lions have proved that they're a well-oiled machine. They know how to win these games as well based on last season. And I think, any given Sunday, right? So they're playing some good teams, but I think the Lions are a good team as well. So I'll go for the over.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too. I might have sounded a bit low on this team, but that's just because of how much has changed. You don't know what you're going to see, but I trust Dan Campbell. His intensity is really hard to match. We saw that in joint practices this week. This week, but they had two joint practices against the Dolphins, and in the first one where the Dolphins didn't know how the Lions practiced or anything, they absolutely dominated them purely because of the physicality and everything. And and I mentioned earlier, those coordinators are wanted by other teams too, so they're not nobodies by any means. I am going to go for the over. I think 11 to 12 wins is certainly doable because once they find their groove, I think they'll be hard to stop because of the way they play and their physicality. And they might have a slower start than expected because it is quite a tough start to the season. But the end of the season is a lot easier than starting, and I think they're capable of just racking up win after win after win after win, and probably sneaking the division on the last couple of games of the season. I think they actually played 2 division games to finish the season as well, so those could be crucial there. So I probably will just win the division. I think you're going to need 12 wins or so to do that. So I'm going to go for the over here, but it is close because of how hard that schedule is for them, because they basically got 4 or 5 Super Bowls, potential Super Bowl matchups in one season really. which
Sure.
not many teams have. Okay, we'll go over to the Vikings now, who are one of those teams that I'm really intrigued by this year, because this team this year is very different to the team last year, and normally you wouldn't change much when you have 14 wins, but it's all changed in Minnesota, and they've spent a lot of money this offseason. Of course, the most obvious change is the one at quarterback, with JJ McCarthy healthy and ready to start his first NFL game in week 1. God, I feel so close now. It's just like, wow, it's a couple of weeks away. Sam Darnold did great last year, of course. He probably played as well as you'd like a bridge quarterback to play. And he earned himself a contract in Seattle after some decent play to help the team win 14 wins. Now, he wasn't anything special, and he was quite lucky not to turn the ball over a couple of times. But with Kevin O'Connell, that man just worked his magic again. After he managed to win several games with like Josh Dobbs the year before when Kirk Cousins went down, he's an exceptional offensive mind, one of the easiest schemes to play in, and for a young quarterback, that's exactly what you want, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I think, there were so many contenders last year for Coach of the Year. Dan Campbell, one of them, right? Like 15 win team. And yet Kevin O'Connell was kind of the clear winner, really. I don't think anyone expected the Vikings to get 14 wins last season. Even the most passionate Vikings fan, maybe even KOC himself, it was an incredible season from them.
6.5 wins this time last year. They put it at 6.5 wins.
Exactly. And he had Sam Darnold, balling the hell out. So all year. So I think, look, that Vikings team that he's kind of him and the GM Quessy have built, like that's a good roster. Top to bottom. I think obviously the JJ McCarthy this year is the big kind of narrative, and he's going to make or break their season really, because their roster is top tier, top to bottom. So I think it's going to be a lot of pressure on JJ McCarthy's shoulders, especially after last season. But it's going to be interesting to watch. But I think Kevin O'Connell, he like you said, he's a great coach, a great offensive mind. He'll certainly he'll provide the best environment for McCarthy to find his feet at least.
That's the thing. It's going to be fascinating how that works right out of the gate, because McCarthy, he's had a lot fewer reps throwing the football than many rookie quarterbacks would do. Now, obviously, a lot of that is just how we played. A lot of it is obviously the fact that Michigan, when he was there, was very run heavy. It's not going to be like that in the NFL a lot of the time, and especially for a team that has Justin Jefferson as well. How do you think he'll fare, bearing in mind that he's had a year on the sidelines to learn, which might have helped, but obviously he's had a year rehabbing as well. How do you think he'll struggle out of the gate just because of how raw he might be?
Yeah, I think the Vikings are gonna offensively, from a quarterback's perspective, I think they're gonna take a step back. I think that's natural. I don't think you can ask JJ McCarthy to go in there and it feels weird to say this, but put up Sam Darnold numbers. Certainly Sam Darnold numbers last season. I think a lot was made of like, this great renaissance of Sam Darnold, and it was amazing to watch. It was a fantastic year for him. But he's an experienced guy. He's been in the league for quite some time. He was still young, and I think he's always been a talented passer. He was just always in, I don't know how to say it, maybe difficult positions in terms of the
terrible situations. Yeah. Well, look, you don't get picked up. After you've been pretty much kicked to the curb by two teams, you don't get picked up by Kyle Shanahan for a little bit if he doesn't feel that there's something there. And then obviously he learns behind Brock Purdy for a year, plays I think a game or two as well, and then next thing you know, he's got this contract in Minnesota, and and now he's back in the NFC West for Seattle. Two guys like Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell don't pick you up if you don't have talent. So he certainly did well there. I think they've basically gone all in, hoping that McCarthy can be this guy on his rookie deal this offseason. They've pretty much surrounded him with as much talent as possible. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who you mentioned there, he's spent $265 million on players in free agency. That's the second most of any team behind the Patriots. Just a year after using several day 2 picks to then go up in a position to have 2 first-round draft picks last year to get McCarthy and Dallas Turner in the first round. Most notably, they have signed defensive lineman Javon Hargrave from the Niners and Jonathan Allen from the Commanders. They've got Will Freese and Ryan Kelly, the two interior linemen for the Colts as well. They also retained Byron Murphy and Aaron Jones, whilst they traded for 49ers running back Jordan Mason and drafted Ohio State guard Jonathan Jackson to play alongside Kelly and Freese on the interior. So the offensive line is improved this year. The defensive line is improved this year. They've kept their best running back. They've kept their best corner from last year as well. With all these moves over the past few years and the fact that McCarthy has got 4 years left on his rookie deal, if they take his 5th-year option, would you say they've gone all in and sort of created a Super Bowl window because of how many good players now are on that team?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I don't know if I'd say the Vikings are necessarily in a... So maybe not this season, I think, because I think you can't really ask a guy who's essentially playing as a rookie in the NFL to be, on a Super Bowl team. They could easily be that because their team is stacked. And if he hits the ground running, then they're going to be a very tough team to beat. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat regardless, because I think unless McCarthy plays, tragically, and throws games away, then the Vikings are still going to be good. And like you said, the moves they've made, they've bolstered that offensive line to protect JJ. They've got one of the best wide receiver cores, or at least receiving cores in the league. When you get the tight end TJ Hawkinson in there as well, and then you look at that. You look at the run game as well. Aaron Jones last year was a fantastic pickup. I think a lot of people didn't know if his best days were behind him after leaving Green Bay, but he kind of proved everyone kind of wrong. I mean, he had a great season. Missed some time with injury because he's just older. He's at that time of his career. Bringing in Jordan Mason, who impressed a lot with CMC struggling last season, I think it was a shrewd move, and it gives McCarthy that kind of that Michigan feel, right? Like how they played when they won the national championship. That's Jim Harbaugh to a T. Run the ball, powerful offensive line, and it looks like Minnesota are at least they're going to throw the ball because. Jordan Addison, who obviously is going to miss some time, and Justin Jefferson. I mean, that is an unbelievable tandem. So they're going to throw the ball. But I think to have that run game for JJ to lean on when, he's there in particularly difficult environments, whether that's, a wet game, a snow game, a road game in a difficult stadium against a difficult opponent. If you can get the run game going, you're in a game. You're in any game of football. So I think they've created Minnesota through their roster construction. I think what we've seen over the offseason, they've created a really nice environment for JJ. Maybe it could be this season. I won't write them off, especially after last year. But yeah, I think their Super Bowl window. I think certainly they've prepared themselves to they're going for it on this rookie contract.
Yeah, and you mentioned a run game there as well. If they can get that going, then it opens up the play action, which obviously can get the receivers involved. But also, play action is also really helpful for a rookie quarterback as well, because then you can open up and spread and confuse defenses and stuff. So it's easy to complete passes. So that really will help as well. And assuming that McCarthy does work and really the quality of the offensive line now, where you've got a top tackle in Christian Darrisaw, you've got a top right tackle, you've got 3 new players on the interior, you've got the run game, you've got the receiving core, and it obviously includes TJ Hawkinson as well. All he has to do is be sort of somewhat decent, and I think they've absolutely, in the next couple of years, will be like a major NFC contender just because of how stacked the team is and the coaching staff as well, because this may be the best coach team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Especially the way that these two coordinators, obviously play callers, O'Connell and Brian Flores, can develop players as well. Like, on the grass is just... there's a craze at the moment in football, or sort of soccer or football, of teams going for more head coach players to develop players on the grass, and these guys, in that aspect, are like that because the amount of players that have improved under O'Connell and Brian Flores, like they've made so many players better. They really have. The latest example of this, right now is happening in training camp, where it sounds like former number 3 overall pick Jeff Okudah is somehow surprisingly finding himself a starting role on his 4th or 5th team now, because he's not panned out at all, but he's looking like he's probably he's been let go by 3 teams. He's probably slated to start outside because alongside another free agent addition, Isaiah Rodgers, because of how well he's been doing in camp. Now, I did get burned by Stephon Diggs once, but everything you read about, if you've seen a video, but he's looking the wrong way. But if you look at everything you're reading in camp, he sounds like he's having a great camp, and plenty of players on that defense have improved. I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel was picked up, 6th round pick. I think it might be the 5th round pick, played really well. Josh Metellus, for example, 6th round. Players like that just have great seasons out of nowhere under Flores, and it's the same with O'Connell's offense. You just get the best. They're so good at getting the best out of players and helping them find their new, or older players like Stephon Gilmore, for example. It just finding something like last year where it was with Flores, just finding something out of him and getting, you're going to play at a high level. Like, Flores must be incredibly happy with this defense because he's kept his nickel corner Byron Murphy, that going into free agency that they look pretty much certain to lose. He's been given 2 top interior defensive linemen in Hargrave and Allen, who have both been around Pro Bowls and everything, and you've got 2 new starting corners to pair with Murphy, in the nickel as well, and that's upgrading a unit that was already the 5th best scoring defense last year. Like, how good do you think this defense could be with all those new additions?
I think they're potentially very good. I mean, last year they were. I don't think. Yeah, they were deceptively good in terms of people didn't expect that unit to be as good at taking the ball away in particular. Like you said, I mean, Andrew Van Ginkel was kind of the surprising star of that team. He was an absolute kind of demon at making plays seemingly every week. I really like the additions they made on that D line. I think adding Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to alongside Jonathan Greenard, who had a great season last year as well. I think they were such a good defensive line last year, or at least in terms of pressuring and controlling games. And that was even getting not that much production really from Dallas Turner. And so if he explodes a bit, even a little bit, it doesn't even have to be an explosion. It can just be like a little boom. That would make them, I think, a very scary proposition up front.
Yeah, I mean, I might sound crazy saying this, but for a team that has Justin Jefferson, I think this defense might actually be the team's biggest strength. Which sounds, it might sound crazy, but like Brian Flores is such an asset. His defense, the deception. They have like 6 or 7 guys dancing over the line of scrimmage, before dropping back and stuff like that. It confuses the hell out of quarterbacks. For example, Jared Goff in the Super Bowl when he was Patriots defensive coordinator, limited the Rams to just 3 points that day. You can just the individual game plans that Flores can do is just crazy. He's a very, very, very good coach, and they're very lucky to have him. And hopefully he does get another head coaching job one day. We'll see how his lawsuit with the NFL goes after the time of the Dolphins, which sounds like that might be coming to some sort of conclusion recently. But I mean, yeah, certainly a great asset to have. And obviously this offense has been good for years. Obviously McCarthy. I'm a little bit worried that he might focus on Jefferson too much, especially with the fact that the receiver 2 situation is not good heading into the season because of Addison's suspension for violating the league's substance abuse policy, as you mentioned earlier on. I think it's 3 games. And then they brought in Rondale Moore to sort of almost be the 3rd guy. And then he was going to have a really big role in his team again. He sounded like he was having a great camp. And then in the first preseason game, he had a season-ending knee injury a year after another season-ending knee injury in the other knee as well. So it's really unlucky having 2 different knees. But so that is a shame because obviously Rondale Moore was highly drafted player a couple of years ago. Look, he was just going to find a role in this team, and that's not the case. So yeah, the likes of Jalen Naylor is going to have to step up, and obviously Hawkinson as well in a receiving game whilst waiting for Addison to come back. Like, would you say that like lack of weapons behind Jefferson and Hawkinson and Addison when he's not there, does that worry you? The sort of drop off behind those guys, or do you still think it's the top unit in the NFL because of those guys?
Yeah, I think it's still you can't I mean Justin Jefferson is at worst the 2nd best receiver in the game. So like they're going to be they're still going to be a threat through the air. I mean obviously if you had Jordan Addison like they will do for most of the season, that receiving core looks phenomenal. I think the drop off after JJ and Hawkinson, like you said, I think it will be a little bit alarming at the start, but it might almost be not a blessing in disguise necessarily, because obviously you want Jordan Addison to be on the field. But I think it will be interesting for JJ McCarthy to find his feet a little bit. I think they're going to lean on the run game in those games, and they'll get some of the other receivers because Justin Jefferson is going to be matched up, and TJ Hawkinson is going to be matched up pretty hard through the suspension, because if we know that it drops off after those two guys, then I'm sure defensive coordinators around the league know that as well. So yeah, the onus will be on guys like Jalen Nailor to step up in his absence. Does it worry me? I don't know if worry is the right word or concern, but I think like it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. It'll show. It'll really put KOC to the test early, which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to kind of be trying to think up this problem. Not with the season on the line. They're not going to. Their season's not going to be it's not going to be make or break in Jordan Addison's absence. So yeah, I think it'll be a challenge. It'll pose a different problem, but I think the Vikings have the talent both on staff and kind of on the field to make it work.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you. As always, we'll end the breakdown by predicting their win total. The bookies have set the line at 9.5 wins because the Vikings are to face the third hardest schedule. I'm going for the over. I think Conor Flores coached away to 14 wins last year, and in my opinion, like this team is better this year than it was last year overall. Like situationally, this team is great as well. Like the team's well coached when you look at their total offense numbers, and then you look at the scoring offense or defense numbers, and they'll be middle of the road, and they'll be the top 5 scoring offense and scoring defense, that kind of thing. Like when they're both. That shows if it's better than the yards, it shows they're a good team situationally, and this team situationally is very good. I do have concerns about that for like many of the NFC contenders as well, like how well coached are they. Like, this team are really well coached. So for me, I think this is an easy bet. I think 10 to 11 wins probably for the Vikings is about right. I'm not saying they're going to get 14, but I think it's one of my favourite bets of the entire season. I think Vikings over just because of what we've seen them do with lesser talented guys. Really. Yeah.
Look, I like it. You're kind of selling me because I think I went into that thinking kind of hitting the under just. I think they probably hit 9. I think 9 wins in my mind. I'm assuming that JJ isn't not I don't think he's even bad by any means or anything, but I think he's going to be just a rookie basically in the NFL. But I mean, you're right. Like that the team is stacked across the board, and they've got the coaching staff to cover up kind of any flaws there might be in JJ's game. So I think it's going to be. I'll stick on the under just to be fun. But I can definitely see them kind of going anywhere between 9 and 12. I think.
Awesome. Right, we'll go over to the Packers now. They're another big contender in both the NFC North and the NFC as a whole. The bookies have them as the 8th biggest favourite to win the Super Bowl, which is the 5th highest among teams in the NFC. Now, last season they were around the same position really in preseason, and then they started out week 1 in Sao Paulo, went toe-to-toe with the Eagles, lost in the final drive of the game, but then they rebounded and began the year 6-2 before losing to the Lions before their bye week, and that's where things got crazy because Green Bay won every game remaining on their schedule against non-division opponents, but fell short by a few games in the NFC North because they went 1-5 in a division. And they were actually a Caro Santos blocked field goal away from going 0-6 in the NFC North. This team had the number 5 total offense, the number 5 total defense, and yet struggled so much in their own division. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
I mean, no. I think it speaks to the strength of the NFC North. Kind of like we said at the top of the show. It's going to be a bloody, it's going to be a blue and black division. They're going to be beating the hell out of each other, I think, all year, like they did last year. So I think it's funny. Yeah, I think Green Bay they're a funny team, and I think when you look at their record last season, they only lost to really good teams.
Well, NFC North and the Eagles, and that's it.
Exactly.
That's literally it.
Exactly. So I think the Packers are an interesting team. I think in general, you almost think because they came 3rd in their division, how good necessarily are they? But I mean, if 11-6 is a down year, as some people have kind of been alluding to, then I'd be taking that every day of the week. I think 11-6. Yeah, I think Matt LaFleur is a fantastic coach, and I think it's going to be interesting. Yeah, I think their season will be defined more by how they fare against the NFC North this year. I think that will be where the test of their strength truly lies because they're clearly a good team.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, LaFleur is a great coach, and that was what made last year so surprising, because they have to be one of the only teams ever to have a division record that bad and still make the playoffs. Like, really, they must have been like, so surprising. Because under LaFleur they've been so good in big games. Like, let's not forget that he is the head coach who went 16-0 in December to start his career as a head coach. That's crazy, right? Obviously he lost a game in December 2023, and like, even to this day he is 20-4 as a head coach in the most important month in football. Yeah, and that season where they did finally lose again, that was actually a season where Jordan Love was one of the best quarterbacks in football, finishing it when they went from 3-6 to making the playoffs and beating the Cowboys as a 2 seed when the Packers were 9-8. And that's not the only time that they've peaked at the right time, late in the year either. So that just makes last year so odd. Obviously losing 2 games in the division to close out the season, and then they're just making it into the playoffs. Without a doubt, they were the hardest team to pick in our preseason power rankings because of that we did about a month or so ago, because you just don't know what they're going to look at. They came 10th overall. I was the lowest out of everyone because I quite harshly put them at 17. And yeah, I think looking back at it, it's just because I was so underwhelmed in those big games last year, because you look at actually this team and how well they were last year, and obviously what we saw from Jordan Love before, I was just expecting a little bit more, I think. And I think the amount of turnovers that their defense produced last year might be like unsustainable. I think that leads us nicely on to the strengths, actually, and strengths to the weaknesses portion, because last year their big strength, Green Bay, was Jeff Hafley's defense. Like, his first year as defensive coordinator after 4 years as head coach at Boston College, the Packers forced 31 turnovers, the 4th most in the league, and only 2 away from the Steelers, who led the league with 33. But like, I don't know if I'd hold off on saying that's the big strength this year, because it's rare that you can create the same turnover like success year after year. It's just not how it happens in the NFL. Like, I mean, Hafley, if you listen to him in his press conferences and his media abilities after practice and stuff, he's confident that they can do it. In fact, he's been preaching the number 43 to his team all offseason, which would be the NFL record for the most fumbles forced by a defense, because he wasn't happy with that. I think it was 14 fumbles last year. He wasn't happy. He thought he could have more. So he's saying 43. 42 is the NFL record from the Giants in 2010, if you're wondering, by the way. They've now gone to the extent where they watch tape back, and when a player forces a turnover on that tape, they've got a siren that plays in the meeting room. They've also named an assistant coach the Ball King, and he's responsible for keeping track of all the turnovers in training camp as well. Do you think it's realistic that this defense can carry on where it left off last year?
I think it's realistic. I don't know if it will necessarily happen. I think that's one of the big questions, right? Like you were saying, I think if the unit kind of devolves into what it was before Hafley's arrival, then I think the Packers could struggle a little bit more. I think they'll still be a difficult team to beat. But I think that defense last year was really what helps them, especially with Jordan Love kind of, because he played banged up. But that the offense wasn't firing at the same rate that maybe people thought they were going to fire. So I think the defense was big last year. I mean, they still don't have a persistent pass rush, or like a core guy that you can look to as the guy who's going to come away with all the sacks and be the chief kind of defensive game wrecker in that regard. And I think it'll be interesting to see how Nixon and some of the other cornerbacks kind of step up with Jair Alexander now in Baltimore. Obviously he was with the Packers for quite some time, so I think it'll be interesting to see how the unit kind of moves on from that. But I think the Packers defense has the tools, especially, I mean, Hafley did so well last year to get that unit going. So I think, I wouldn't put it past them this year. I think it'll be tough, but I can see them going for it. Maybe not 43 fumbles, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, 43 turnovers is good. That's 43 fumbles. 43 turnovers is good alone, really. I agree with you. I do like the defense. I think obviously Xavier McKinney had a great year last year, but on paper, I'm not so sure they've improved from a year ago. Like you mentioned, I still think they're missing a pass rusher. Really, they've been in talks with so many guys. I think there was Max Crosby and stuff over the offseason. Obviously, and Myles Garrett and those deals happened. Trey Hendrickson's been offered up on the trade block. breaking news today. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a move they could make that potentially. They do need a pass rush there.
I think I heard as well that they had submitted. I think they might be the only team that have a concrete offer for Micah Parsons at the moment. But
there you go.
That would make sense, right?
Again, right, exactly, because you add Micah Parsons to the defense, and then you're thinking, well, maybe 43 fumbles can happen because of the pressure that is going to be put on quarterbacks. But no, exactly. Like, you've got two guys there who are hoping to get new contracts. And, there are still scenarios there, and I think it's a good time to be looking for a pass rusher as well. And we'll see what happens with. They've lost to Darryl Slayton in the inside to the Bengals, and you'll see what happens with the corners. Obviously, moving on from Jair Alexander, who's been a great player over the years, but couldn't really stay healthy, and Eric Stokes, the first-round pick from a couple of years ago, who hasn't really panned out. They're probably about the same as they were last year, I think. And I think we'll see what happens. But there are definitely spots in that defense where you're like, okay, they could do with. I think they probably do with another corner, if I'm being honest, and again, probably a pass rusher as well to be like a. One because this team is like favourite in the NFC, but they're still really goddamn good. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the offense on the other hand has definitely improved. Adding Matthew Golden in the first round of the draft and bringing in Mecole Hardman to cover whilst Christian Watson recovers from his ACL injury. They've also made some moves to bolster the offensive line as well, adding Aaron Banks, who played in the same scheme in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan, which then sees Elton Jenkins move to centre, whilst Jordan Morgan, their first round pick from last year, looks to be playing at guard, and he's having a much better camp and pushing, even pushing for the left tackle job as well. So we'll see what happens there. And of course, Josh Jacobs was excellent last year as well, with nearly 1,700 total yards and 16 total touchdowns. After finally spending that first round pick on a receiver for the first time since 2002, do you think this passing offense now Jordan Love is healthy? He has had an injury this year, but it's a ligament on his thumb, but it's his non-throwing hand, so really he is healthy. Do you think this passing offense can get back on track with a healthy Jordan Love this year, because he was banged up as hell last year with loads of different stuff?
Yeah, I think so. I think this is going to be a really big year for Jordan Love. I think there's you should be going into it with optimism if you're a Packers fan, because he obviously looked phenomenal down the stretch in 2023, which is why they had kind of all those calls that they were the Super Bowl kind of dark horse heading into last year, and then he gets injured in the first game. So yeah, and I think he returned right in week 4, week 5, or whatever. But I think he, as you said, he was definitely banged up the whole year. He was not 100%. So this season, I think it's a big year, because if Jordan Love, what if he's just a kind of mid-level kind of guy, like or mid, not a
he's
bad
up and
thing.
Down. He's up and down, and that's the thing. I think. Yeah, it's gone.
No, sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, he has all the tools, right? Like we've seen it before. He makes these incredible throws. The way he slings it, he kind of possesses all these incredible traits. And you give him a guy like Matthew Golden, which is funny because the Packers receiving core. You could argue they don't really have like that clear number one guy, but like in terms of depth, that room is deep. They've got guys who can make plays across the board, really, in receiving. So I think maybe it was a bit of a surprise they went receiver in the first round.
I was also surprised that they drafted a smaller guy, because they always draft big receivers, and that was like the most un-Green Bay thing possible. So we'll be interested to see what happens there. Like, obviously with Love as well, like, hopefully now we're in year 3, he can become a more consistent player, because once Green Bay are on it, we saw that run where they beat Dallas and won so many games to end the year. They're on it when they're on it, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. And I think as well with Jordan Love, like last season, I think they had 23 drop passes, which is fifth most in the NFL. So look, a quarterback can only put the ball in the guy's hands. So, the guy has to still make the play. So maybe Matthew Golden was a good pick in the first round. But look, I think Jordan Love, I think he has the talent. I think it's a big year. I think it could define how he's viewed longer term. But I think if you're a Green Bay fan, I think you're coming into this year like pretty excited. I think the Packers have the chance. Think like we said earlier, like their record is 11-6. If they win 1 or 2 more of their division games, they're in that NFC North title battle, and potentially getting the number 1 seed in the NFC. So, there are a few flipped results away last season from being a real threat, and that was with a banged up Jordan Love. And so it'll be interesting. I think they have a good team, and they have Jordan Love has potential to be a great quarterback, and that's what Packers fans will be hoping to see. Again, and we'll see it all kind of play out this year.
Absolutely. Okay, it's now time to decide whether we believe the Packers will go over or under their projected win total by the bookies. And now they have the seventh hardest schedule in the NFL, which is actually the easiest in a division, which is interesting they got there, because everyone else has got really mental schedules. And their total is set at 9.5 wins. Which stages do you think they'll go?
So win total is 9.5 wins.
9.5 wins.
Yeah, I'm going to go over, man. I think the Packers are going to be. I can't see them dropping too much off 11-6. Really, I think if anything from the teams we've really talked about so far, they almost have the propensity to improve on 11-6. So I think, yeah, I'll hit the over. I hit the over on that one for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 10 wins is absolutely achievable.
Yeah,
I don't know whether they can compete in the NFC properly yet.
Sure,
but I am surprised it is only 9.5. If it was 10.5, I might consider the under, but at 9.5, I don't even bother. I don't even think about it. It's definitely the over there. All right, we'll finish the podcast off with the Bears, who this year look probably the most interesting they have done as a franchise in a very long time. It's a new era in Chicago as Ben Johnson comes over from the division rivals, the Lions, we mentioned earlier in the podcast, to become the head coach after he turned down a few jobs last offseason and decided to stay with Detroit. Now, Johnson, who is widely regarded as one of the most innovative play callers in the NFL right now, he was highly sought after coach for years, pretty much. And he's chosen Detroit. He's chosen Chicago from Detroit. Part of the reason why he's chosen the Bears is because he gets to work with 2024 number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams, who many believe could be a superstar in the waiting. Johnson has picked Dennis Allen as his defensive coordinator, who spent the last 3 years as head coach of the Saints, and prior to that, he spent 7 seasons there as defensive coordinator under Sean Payton. And whilst the pair have never coached together, they do have a mutual friend in Lions head coach Dan Campbell, who spent many years in New Orleans with Allen and Payton. And then to solidify the start of a new era in Chicago, general manager Ryan Poles was given a 3-year contract extension to 2029 as well. After years of mediocrity, you could say they've not really been bad. They traded their way to number 1 overall pick after trading it away the year before. 7-10 team gets number 1 overall pick was crazy. They've been mediocre for so long. The future finally looks bright in Chicago, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. When you land a name like Ben Johnson, who, like you said, he was the most sought after head coaching candidate last year, let alone this year. So he's really been a name kind of that's been around the NFL, or in terms of just as a name that everyone's kind of been talking about, and for good reason. For the Lions offense, like kind of what we said earlier in the show, that Detroit offense was rolling teams for 2 or 3 years. So I think the Chicago Bears Chicago fans definitely have a reason to be excited. They have good, they finally have what feels like a kind of a superstar head coach. Whether Ben Johnson is going to be a superstar head coach or not, I mean, he's at least the name and he has kind of the pedigree that you'd like. And he's an offensive guy who can work with Caleb, which I think is kind of the most important thing. It almost feels weird that I don't think Matt Eberflus did a bad job in his first year. It was 7-10 when they traded for the number 1, or had the number 1 pick from the trade. But I think you want the offensive coordinator hire, I think, had to be better. And so I think Caleb's already on his 4th play caller now, entering year 2, which is kind of insane. Kind of insane. But no, I think at least that the quarterback, I think for a team to be successful, or at least to set up for success, you need to nail the quarterback, you need to nail the head coach. Obviously it's we don't know if they've nailed either yet, but they've certainly got the foundation in place for it. There's absolutely a reason to be excited and to think that this team can be competitive going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this team will certainly get eyes this year.
Yeah,
they'll certainly get eyes. Of course, they normally do anyway, because the Chicago Bears, who are one of the oldest franchises in the NFL, they're in one of the US's biggest cities in Chicago as well. But with all the hype around this new era, we are going to be seeing a lot of them this year. Obviously for Poles and for Johnson, the priority this offseason was protecting Caleb Williams because obviously in his rookie year he's got a league high 68 sacks, multiple play callers, everything that happened. So they went super aggressive and overhauled the interior of their offensive line, adding 3 established NFL starters in Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, and Drew Dolman. And they also gave him 2 more weapons in first-round pick Colston Loveland, tight end, and a second-round pick Luther Burden as well. And they also added Olamide Zacchaeus in free agency as well, who's obviously played for Washington, the Falcons, and the Eagles. Andrew, obviously Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit thrived off the interior offensive line. We've mentioned how the big losses could be there. They've gone out and got 3 guys, Chicago, and pass catch and tight end Colton Loveland, who can be the summer Porter, for example. With these 3 linemen, you can certainly see what they're doing, can't you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're creating an offensive environment for Caleb to thrive. The Colton Loveland pick is a really interesting one because I quite liked Cole Kmet. Well, I liked. It's as if he's perished.
It's still there.
he's still there. It'll be interesting to see how they set up. Because you put those 2 guys on the field as well together. They'll be a hard team to stop. They'll be a fun team to watch. I think, like you said, they're going to get eyes, and I think offensively at least they're going to be certainly be improved. I think on last year. I like to think that we're going to see some more of Caleb, like the promise that everyone saw in Caleb before the 2024 draft. But I think they're creating a situation where, where actually there's a lot of young guys as well to grow with Caleb as well. I think DJ Moore is really the only kind of older guy. I mean, Cole Kmet as well, but I mean, he was only drafted a few years ago. So now we've got, in Roma Dunze and Luther Bird and Colson Loveland, like these are all guys who have been drafted, in the last year or even this year. So they're building a core set of players to grow with them, kind of like what we saw with the Lions, right? Like getting all the running back, getting Jimmy Gibbs, and then building
the
that.
Lions contracts all expire at the same time, like I was saying earlier. Like it's same with this Bears team. You getting all these young guys that could, if you hit on those guys, you're golden. Like the Saints in 2017, for example, they had all those guys and they had that mini run out of nowhere. When they still had Drew Brees, it's because they had one incredible draft class. Like for this team, if you as the Lions did, if you just hit on these players, then I agree with you. You're golden there, really, aren't you?
For sure. And then, like you said as well, the bringing in O-line veterans, you get those guys in who have been there, done that. Joe Tooney in particular, who's been doing it for two goats really, and doing it at an incredibly high level. Really, the last few years, kind of the best form of his career in Kansas City. So. Yeah, look, I think you bring that winning experience, you bring that that experience in general, I think is really crucial because the Bears last year, that offensive line was terrible. I mean, I can't remember which game. I think I want to say it was the week 2 against the Houston Texans. I think that game, I remember watching that. The Texans weren't even blitzing, and it was they were just manhandling the offensive line.
And at the other end, CJ Stroud was in for his life as well. It's exactly what you had. There is one big difference between the Detroit offense and this offense, and that's like the style of quarterback. Like Jared Goff is very much a pocket passer, like a quick release, and Williams on the other hand is a playmaker who bides his time, runs around, tries to make plays. That style of play is very high risk, high reward. And we certainly saw that in his time at USC and his time at Oklahoma as well. Whilst Williams didn't throw many interceptions in his rookie year, only a couple, he did hold on to the ball for over 3 seconds on average, which is in the top 5 in the NFL. And when scrambling around, he's often taken some pretty dumb sacks, and he also fumbled 10 times as well. I don't know if you've seen it. There's this one play from last year. I think it was the Vikings game on Monday Night Football. He's just running around, and he's playing Madden the way he's moving around and hurdling over empty air and everything. That's what he did. He did in one game last year. And, obviously the arm is there, of course. The athleticism's there. The pedigree's there. He's played with some great play callers in college and the NFL now, in Johnson as well. But would it be fair that to say that the expectations that he's going to become a star this year are probably slightly unrealistic because of how much Johnson has to work with him to become a reliable quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over, you could say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we saw some traits last season from Caleb that are part of the allure of his talent. That kind of Mahomes-esque making plays out of nothing, when it's broken down kind of thing. That's what Caleb that's one of his great strengths. But trying to do that on almost every play in the NFL isn't going to work.
It's working mentally, isn't it? It's the what you need to do mentally. It's like that Josh Allen, obviously, like Josh Allen physically had every tool in the book. It's just that when he actually started working in the off season with QB coaches and everything, that's when he started getting better, because it was like just the way he actually saw the game, and that's what takes time, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I think just getting used to the speed of the NFL as well. Yeah. Like, it's one thing to. I mean, Caleb's an interesting one because obviously he dominated in college for so long. And at different schools as well. So I think for him, he probably went into the NFL and the hype surrounding him. I think you could almost be forgiven if you're Caleb Williams, because going into the league, kind of thinking you're the man, right? Like, because it's probably gonna happen at least a little bit. And so you can kind of see last season. I think you could tell early in the season. I mean, they were 4-2, so at one stage, I think they were still doing well in those early few weeks. But I think Caleb definitely certainly at several points last season would have been like, okay, this is a lot faster. It's a different game to college. And I think that's something that Ben Johnson's going to work with, and that will take time. I think this year, I don't know what Bears fans should really. It's difficult to say what you want them to like what they should want of their team. But I think the bare minimum would be seeing flashes of Caleb Williams' potential more consistently. I don't even. You'd want to see it maybe weekly, but like you want to see him play consistently well, play on script a lot in terms of with Ben Johnson's playbook, and just play kind of more. Sounds ridiculous to say, but almost play more like game manager kind of ball. Just because you can't be the superhero in the NFL unless you're Patrick Mahomes in 2018. But it's
learning when to be the superhero.
Exactly.
Like Mahomes and Allen and Lamar Jackson have that on lock because they know when to take over a game and when to move. Whereas Caleb was just doing it willy nilly last year. I think that's the thing really. Obviously we talked a lot about this offense, but the training camp talk really has been over Dennis Allen's defense. Quite quietly they retooled their defensive line, adding the likes of Dye Odinga from the Colts and Grady Jarrett from the Falcons, adding to a team that had the number 13 scoring defense last year already. Everything I'm reading on from the Bears camp really has been all the beat reporters have been raving about Odinga's impact at training camp. If he can back that up in the season, the pass rush duo of him and Montez Sweat will absolutely be a strength for this team. And I like their defensive backs too. And then passing downs like the linebacker duo of Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards have played so hard as well. So this unit has been cooking in training camp. Especially in the two joint practices. I mentioned how hard the lines have played. Well, the Bears, they've had two joint practices with the Bills and the Dolphins, and they've managed to intercept both Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa 3 times in a single practice. That this defense has been playing very well in those joint practices, which teams value a lot more now than the preseason games because you get starters going up against each other in practice when you don't have that in the pre. So Dennis Allen's defense is playing very, very well, which is great. It's great news for Chicago because Allen is a guy where they're unlikely to lose him if this defense is good, because he's already had 2 chances at being a head coach and not succeeded. So if you sort of like what Sean McVay had in the early days of the Rams, where if you have a young, innovative head coach, offensive guy, and then a really wily old. Dennis Allen's not old. He's got brown hair still or anything. A really experienced defensive coordinator who can do whatever you want. That's a real good duo because you're not going to lose a DC. Like Vic Fangio and the Eagles, for example, last year. He's never going to be a head coach again. But you can call a great defense year on year. That's having a top defensive coordinator like Allen to build a program. That's great news for Ben Johnson, isn't it? That is pretty much hit the ground running already this year.
Oh, for sure. I think that was one of the more kind of understated hires of the offseason. I think Dennis Allen. I'm a big proponent of guys who have failed as head coaches necessarily, but guys who have not had as much success as they would have liked as head coaches, but then kind of revert back to being a coordinator because that's their specialist subject. So I'm a big fan of teams when they do that, when they go back. So I think I liked the Chicago hire of Dennis Allen. it'll be really interesting to see how the Bears defense plays. I mean, they did add some good pieces. Deo, like you said, from the Colts and Grady Jarrett as well. So I think that line will be fun to watch with Montez Sweat, of course. But I think they're like one real kind of like star pass rusher away from being a really scary defense. That means, of course, that they've still got the foundation there to be productive. And I think with Dennis Allen calling the shots, they will be, which is encouraging. I mean, they're basically, I think, being told that they're one piece away from being a real pass rushing threat or like a real kind of game wrecking team. I think that's encouraging. So you've got the foundations there to be at least productive and better than last year for sure. So they'll be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, and as for the Bears' weakness, I think my one worry for this team is actually their run game, because always saw in Detroit was the run game was the key for everything. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, it opened up everything. I think DJ Moore and Rome Odunze are a lot more closer to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams than DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson are to Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I feel like they've got the receivers there. The running back room, now they've got the interior linemen to get it going, of course, so they're going to have a run game. But I just don't think that they have the backs that can get anywhere near the production of the other two guys that Johnson had in Detroit. So that is a little bit of a worry for me. But I still think this team is going to be really good. And going over to predict the thing now, the Bears have 8.5 wins as their projected total. They have the 5th toughest schedule in the NFL. I really like this Bears roster on paper. I had them at 12 when we were doing our power ranking, just on paper, looking at it. But when you actually look at who they're playing and the components and everything, I think they're going to probably are going to come last in the division. But I think it'll be close. I think they're going to get, the total is 8.5 wins. I think they are a few pieces away from really contending. So I'm going to go for the under, but I think it'll be close. I wouldn't be surprised to see this team win 9 games. I really wouldn't be surprised to see it because they've got a talent there. But I think it's going to take time. Next year, they're absolutely I think they can absolutely compete in the division next year. Probably, and I think maybe in other divisions they might be a playoff team this year. But in this division, they're not a playoff team. They're not going to get a winning record. I don't think So I'm going to go under the 8.5 wins. Which way are you going?
Yeah, I think I agree with kind of every point you made. I mean, I think 8 wins for me seems good, like promising for them, or at least kind of that feels like what the kind of team that I think they're going to be. Like you said, like on paper, they have the potential to push for more than that. But I think the schedule, they're playing some very difficult teams. And then, I mean, they're in the maybe not the best division, but it's looking like the best division in football, and they're certainly the most competitive. So, all 4 teams are going to be at least good. And I think the Bears, they'll be, if we're saying that they're coming last with an 8-9 record, that's still a good year, I think, for the Bears in terms of a step forward. Obviously we would see out on the field, but I think if they see big kind of maybe not big, but they see steps forward from Caleb in terms of his, how he reads the game and plays in the NFL, and then as long as they see potential going forward and Ben Johnson clicking as a head coach, get to 8 wins, yes, might be coming last in the division again. But yeah, I think that would be a good season, I think, for Chicago. If it really feels, because like you said, then after that, then 2026 could be a much more fun year. And especially when you feel like you've got your franchise quarterback, then the next decade would be nice as well. So I think Chicago haven't had nice things in a long time. So I think it'll be I think I'll hit the under, but they were what? They were 5-12 last year. So look, I think 8 wins, yes, it's the under. It's still an improvement. And I think if we see that reflected in the play as well, then I don't know how much more Bears fans could really ask for.
Well, the fact that the bookies have them at 8.5 wins shows that they think they could be a playoff team as well.
Yeah,
so that just shows how good this division is. That's a wrap for today's episode. We're now officially halfway through our preview series, and we'd love to hear your takes on your team's preseason so far and what we think about our team as well. So let us know what you think. Hit us up on Twitter at 14 yards, or drop your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to today's guest, Andrew Gamble, for joining me. Andrew, where can the listeners find more of your work?
The best place to go, unfortunately, would be the hive that is X still. At Andrew_Gamble. And yeah, you can check out our coverage of the NFL all year at the Mirror US Sports as well.
Awesome. If you've enjoyed the show, a quick rating on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts helps us out massively, because if you get more reviews, it helps push up the charts and the recommender feeds and everything as well. So, and if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give the video a like. And when you hit subscribe as well, if you've not subscribed already, because so many of you that listen regularly aren't subscribed, if you hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button, it means you get a notification when we next upload the podcast if you're watching it as well, so you never miss a episode. That's it. I'll be back later in the week with another guest as we roll into the second half of our divisional preview series for 2025, starting with the AFC South. But until then, have an amazing rest of the day, and I will see you next time.